The State Tax Commission was in court in Soda Springs this week as the trial of a group of tax protesters got underway. That trial is part of a major crackdown on people who refuse to pay state income taxes. Tonight on Idaho Reports, producer Paula Wissel covers the opening of the trial and talks with the state's attorney and the leader of the protest group. That's Idaho Reports, 1/2 hour from now.
The funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Friends of 4, 10, and 12.
We're just trying to educate the people on what the state has tried to do with the writ of mandate, the fact that it's unconstitutional and violates all of the people's rights, not only mine, but yours and yours and yours and everyone's.
In Soda Springs, a number of people are going to court and may go to jail for refusing to file state income tax forms. They say forcing them to file is unconstitutional. That story tonight on Idaho Reports. Good evening. I'm Paula Wissel in Pocatello, filling in for Mark Johnson. Last week in Arkansas, a fiery gun battle resulted in the death of a county sheriff and of tax protester Gordon Call. Call had been sought since fleeing a similar shootout in North Dakota, where 2 U.S. Marshals died. Gordon Call was a member of a group that believes income taxes to be unconstitutional. Although all those who believe as Call did may not carry it to the same extreme, the tax protest movement is a growing one in the nation and the state. Here in Idaho, the most organized group of protesters is in southeastern Idaho, primarily in Pocatello and a town south of here, Soda Springs. The protest organization, the Citizens Tax Council, is based in Soda Springs and boasts around 1,500 members. The state of Idaho, in part to deal with the large number of protesters not filing state tax forms, passed in 1982 a writ of mandate law. The law allows the state to compel protesters to file the forms through a court order. 2 people in Soda Springs have already served jail time for refusing to comply with the orders. In an admitted attempt to make examples out of the protesters, the state recently served writ of mandate orders on 30 protesters simultaneously. The first of the mass hearings on those orders took place Monday in Soda Springs.
We're holding up signs. We're picketing for the...
Why?
So our fathers won't go to jail.
Are they going into court today?
Yeah. Some are going tomorrow and the next day. And we're just doing these signs so they don't have to go to jail.
We're just trying to educate the people on what the state has tried to do with the writ of mandate, the fact that it's unconstitutional and violates all of the people's rights, not only mine, but yours and yours and yours and everyone's, through a writ of mandate. And we're just trying to educate the public to what's going on. And, of course, some of us have to appear in court.
Are you one of them?
I'm not. My husband is.
The defendants and their families arrived at the Caribou County Courthouse with signs and American flags and obediently paraded up and down the sidewalk for the benefit of each arriving camera crew. Although the Citizens Tax Council members are normally distrustful of the legal profession, this time they had an attorney on hand to defend them, a Libertarian Party member from Montana, Neil Halprin.
As much as I understand that their legal arguments are sometimes weak, they're based on an underlying view of the Constitution and an underlying view of the rights and privileges of American citizens. And because of my own political background, I have a lot of sympathy for their activities, and so in these kinds of cases, I'm more likely to be trusted than other people they might get.
Defending the state in court was Deputy Attorney General William von Tagen, who works out of the State Tax Commission office.
It's not unconstitutional based on the case law, and that's the best answer I can give you. The courts have reviewed it. Number one, I guess you really have to get down to basics to start to answer that question, and taxes are constitutional. If you're going to have income taxes, you've got to have a way to assess the income, and we have a program called, a policy called self-assessment, where you assess your own taxes and you pay the government. if you've got to collect taxes, if income taxes are constitutional, which they are, the method is also constitutional unless there's some strict problem with it. And the courts have been very liberal in saying that it is constitutional.
And as for the defendants' ex post facto arguments that a 1982 law is being used to prosecute them for acts in earlier years, that in essence the law is being used retroactively, von Tagen says that simply isn't true. The defendants, he says, are being charged for current actions.
For it to be retroactive, the act would have had to have been completed. This is basically a continuing act. The fact that you didn't file a return for 1979 on April 15, 1980 doesn't mean that your duty went away. It means that you still have that. And we cited some case authority, and we believe that there is still an obligation, and it's a present obligation, and we're using a current law to enforce a present obligation.
And the debate isn't over yet. District Judge Francis Rasmussen granted the defense attorney a continuation of the hearing, and each attorney now has an opportunity to file briefs on the legality of the issue. Some defendants, including the leader of the group in Soda Springs, have said they will go to jail if, in their words, that's what it takes to protect their rights.
Well, I have no intention of being forced to file a tax return under these conditions.
How long would you stay in jail?
Whatever it takes. I have, if it takes 10 years, then I guess I'll be in prison for 10 years.
This small community of less than 5,000 has one of the largest concentrations of tax protesters in the state. The tax protest movement has flourished here in southeastern Idaho during the past several years, and that's due largely to the work of tax protest leader Cliff Turner. He's openly courted the miners and the factory workers involved in the phosphate industries here. Through brochures, rallies, and radio programs, the group has been successful in recruiting a large number of blue-collar workers here and in nearby Pocatello. The majority of defendants now before the court in Soda Springs work for a mining company here. Cliff Turner, director of the Citizens Tax Council, operates out of this two-story building in Soda Springs. He sees his work as a community service.
The basic purpose of Citizens Tax Council is it grew out of a need for assistance. People were searching for assistance to help them challenge an ever-increasing bureaucracy in the name of the IRS, originally is what it was founded for. To help them to say, wait a minute, we've got some rights here. We have a constitution that's being ignored by the government, and we want to know what we can do to change that. Well, we were established as an educational organization.
Constitution was made for me.
In rallies like this one held early in 1982, Turner and other tax protest leaders stressed the goodness and the rightness of not paying taxes, and speakers here emphasized their loyalty to the Constitution. The words God, liberty, and America are heard over and over again.
I appreciate you very much for coming out tonight. I appreciate any Americans that will take time out of their valuable schedule to listen and find out what's wrong in this country, because we do have some problems. We have some serious problems. We have some problems that can't be overlooked. We have some problems that's going to take some time, and this thing is not going to be easy. We have the materials available for you. We have the backing to help you. I'll go to prison for you if necessary.
Times are tough right now, and people say, hey, wait a minute, you know, I can't hardly afford to feed my own family, but yet here's these bureaucrats eating steak every night. Here's these foreign countries getting all these billions of foreign aid dollars, and I can't even afford to feed my family. And they say, now why should I do that? So they stop paying on that basis. Hey, that money is mine, and I'm not going to have the government wasting it. That's basically what a lot of people start out on, but they end up saying, well, now wait a minute. Once they do get involved and they begin to find out the real reasons behind what our motivation is to restore the Constitution.
In the past, the Citizens Tax Council has concentrated its efforts on the IRS, and they say this recent action by the state of Idaho hit them by surprise. The Deputy Attorney General arguing these cases agrees that in the past the state has not pursued non-filers to the degree it is now, and that's due largely to the passage in 1982 of the writ of mandate law.
Well, I held the state of Idaho quite high in esteem, put them on a pedestal, as a matter of fact, as a state that honored people's constitutional rights. One of the reasons that I did is because I had not seen them harassing people like they have done with a mandate law. I have not in the past seen them putting people in prison for trying to force them to do things against their will. I have suddenly discovered that the state of Idaho is probably a bigger type of tyranny, committing more tyranny now under this new mandate law than any other state in the Union.
Did the law come about in part because of these protest filings?
Yes, I think probably the writ of mandate law is used, we use it primarily against tax protesters. I don't like the term tax protesters any more than Mr. Halpern does, but the terms I might use he might like even less, so we'll stick with tax.
What would you use?
I might use the term tax cheats, but they perhaps don't like that. But with the we do use it a lot against tax protesters. If you have somebody running around the state saying you don't have to file tax returns and they're apparently getting away with it, then their neighbor may try it. Even if their neighbor doesn't join an organized tax protest movement, he may just stop filing a tax return.
So in a lot of ways this is enforcing something even without taking people to court.
It is. Oh, it is. That's been the, and again, that wasn't a benefit that we necessarily counted on, but it's been just a fantastic benefit. We have gotten, I believe, the estimate is a 300% increase in people who are voluntarily coming forward and filing delinquent returns. In addition, we don't have statistics yet, but we have already noticed a reduced number of protest-type returns. People realize there's a law out there. And people might grumble about taxes, but generally most Idahoans do want to comply with the law.
It is attempted instilling fear, and I'm sure it has has had its effect on a lot of people. You know, the IRS has been doing this for years. I'm surprised that the state of Idaho hasn't done it before this. Again, that's the principle that they work upon, is upon fear. That's not what our government was established. The basis of taxation was not established on that. It was all voluntary. No one has to pay any taxes in this country. Now that's quite a broad statement. But when you realize that when the founders were establishing our Constitution, I think, personally, that they realized at that time that you could not reach into the pocket of one man and extract dollars out of that pocket to finance this wonderful government that they were forming. They realized it had to be financed from voluntary contributions from satisfied customers. And you go and ask the average American today how satisfied he is with what the government's doing with his money.
Taxes are constitutional. Everybody, a lot of the protest movement seems to think that taxes came about with the 16th Amendment in the early 20th century. It's not so. Income taxes were in England as early as 1435. They've been in this country since before the Revolution. Many of the states at the time the Constitution was ratified had income taxes.
But what do you think would happen if everyone did what you're advocating?
What would they do? I'll tell you, depends on whether you're asking that statement in reference to the state government or in reference to the federal government.
Okay, let's say the state government.
In reference to the state government would probably have to start doing the things that start protecting the person's privacy. For instance, I'd have no objection to filing a state return and paying whatever taxes they felt was due to the state of Idaho, if the state of Idaho would guarantee my privacy to that information. But they won't even answer the questions concerning that. They know themselves that they're going to turn that information over to the federal government. The federal government is trying to shut me up. They've been trying for 4 years to shut me up. So if I were to turn information over to the state and the state wouldn't guarantee me privacy, then they would turn that over to the federal government and the feds would use that information to prosecute me with. They want something like that. So until the state starts answering my questions, I'm certainly not going to cooperate with them.
They say they aren't against paying taxes. If you can tell them how to do it without waiving their rights and promise them confidentiality, that you won't release that information to the IRS or to other organizations.
Well,
And they say you haven't answered their questions and haven't guaranteed them that confidentiality.
what we get, and again, I believe this is part of a scheme, and they can say otherwise, but based on what I view objectively, I think that this is a scam to get out of taxes. With a lot of the returns from individuals in Soda Springs, they give us this list of questions. When we sent them a demand letter, they gave us a list of questions, asking us, what is $1? All sorts of different questions. How can I do it without violating a Fifth Amendment right? With regards to the Fifth Amendment right, my quick answer would be to follow the instructions like everybody else. I really don't think it violates a Fifth Amendment right. In addition, the information contained on a return is basically neutral. It asks for the amount of your income. It asks for your tax liability, asks for deductions, how you arrive at your tax liability. It does ask your occupation and your Social Security number. But this information is basically pretty much neutral. With regard to distribution to different state agencies, it's true that the IRS and the State Tax Commission does to an extent have a working relationship, and there is information shared. It has to be done. It's a very difficult procedure when we want information from the IRS or they want it from us. It goes through a number of disclosure officers. With regards to sharing it with other governmental entities, we might share some statistics as to general income, but we do not disclose information off of somebody's tax returns. There's 2 sections of the Idaho Code that provide for very, very severe penalties should any individual ever do that. You also wonder with these individuals if they're sincere in their Fifth Amendment assertion, then why not go through and put object Fifth Amendment even on the income boxes, which wouldn't be proper, but figure out their tax and pay it. I mean, if they're really worried about criminal action being taken against them, why wouldn't they go ahead and pay their tax? So I really doubt the sincerity of most of these individuals. I've come across 2 in the state that I would regard as being sincere.
I'm not against paying taxes. Matter of fact, the idea of getting out of paying state taxes has never been my intention. My only intention was to preserve my rights. And I've asked the state of Idaho and the Internal Revenue Service repeatedly over the years, you know, how I can comply with their laws without waiving any of my constitutional rights. And the state's position now, as the IRS used to be, or the IRS is, the states didn't used to bother people, but now the state has implemented the principle of might makes right. In other words, they're saying that you do what we say or else you'll go to jail. And they're using a criminal penalty, jail, it has to be criminal before you can go to jail, supposedly, to implement a civil statute. They say that they're using civil contempt, but what it amounts to is they're coming in the back door trying to use the same type of tactics, the same type of thing that the IRS has used for years.
This is not a criminal matter. I have been involved in 10 cases around the state in which writs have been issued, and I'm not talking about the 2 cases today. 10 other cases around the state, and the final writ was issued. In 8 of those cases, the people said, all right, I realize I have a court order. I want to file a return. And they filed a return. Nobody went to jail. No criminal action was taken based on the information in that return or anything else. But with 2 individuals, they decided to disregard a court order, basically thumb their nose at the judicial authority. And because of that action, they were put in jail. They filed a return, and then after a day in jail for each of them, they both got out.
The state of Idaho is not interested in assisting people in doing these things. Matter of fact, the people that they put in jail, they would not even send, contrary to what the news media put out, they would not even send an individual down to help this lady fill out a return, like they said, like they put out falsely that they had. They sent no one down. If she filled out a return because she wanted, because she was a sick woman, she had to get out of jail. Her heart was in bad condition. I expect that the state of Idaho is going to spend a lot of money spinning their wheels over the next few years, unless Judge Rasmussen decides that he's going to simply put people in jail, because they have absolutely no cause to put these people in jail, and we fully intend on pursuing this thing all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Before, at least in my case, the other people I cannot speak for, but in my particular case, I have bold intentions of, before I make any commitments to do anything the state says, I'm going to pursue it all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and that's going to be costly for the state of Idaho. It's going to cost them a lot more money than they'll ever collect from me, because there's even a question as to whether or not I'm required to file a return, or whether I will even owe any tax after they get through making me file a return.
Oh, that's not true at all. First of all, it might be true that with a, you know, and I hate to use names, but well, some of the individuals we've gone after down here in southeastern Idaho, it might be true that on a one-on-one basis, that person's tax liability may not quite pay for our trip coming down. However, the Idaho Code does state that we're to get our cost back should we prevail, just as they would get their cost if they prevail. While it may not pay for that, the general overall non-filing picture, and this was covered in the last broadcast covering this, and I can't really remember the figures, but this has been a very successful program. We have already exceeded the estimates that have been set forth by the legislative auditor. Each estimate that comes out of the non-filing division as to the money that we will bring into state coffers has been going up. So it's just not true at all. That's completely false.
It isn't just income taxes the Citizens Tax Council opposes. Members of the group are also against the concept of planning and zoning, registering vehicles, and requiring drivers to obtain licenses. Driving, they say, is a right, not a privilege. All of this, as one might expect, has created a degree of disharmony in this small, somewhat isolated community. Some members have accused local law enforcement officials of harassment for stopping them for not having their cars registered. In the local weekly newspaper here, charges between group members and opponents have been almost a regular feature. City officials say that although Soda Springs is a conservative community, the majority of the townspeople here do not subscribe to Turner's philosophy.
I think that generally in this area, as I find in most of the western United States and the mountain area, a concern as to the growth of government, as to its pervasiveness, especially at the federal level. I think most people are in favor of home rule, or government being closer to the people, closer to home, where they can see it and sort of handle it and feel it and touch it and know just where it goes and what it's doing, and can see it with their own two eyes, and know that it's not some mysterious force that they can never find the center of. And so I think that there is that attitude here. So yeah, I think there is some sympathy for that, but not to the degree that it's not, the sympathy is not widespread to that degree of saying, no, we will disobey the laws. We'll go outright and challenge the laws by saying, no, we will not obey them. It's brought a controversial issue out and to the open. I think that definitely being associated, or most people look at Soda Springs as a center of tax protestation, or a group of protesters in this area. But the truth of the matter is that very few people in the town protest their taxes to that degree. Nobody likes to pay taxes. I don't know anybody anywhere who is thrilled by that, but they do it because they feel there's an obligation there, not only legally but morally, and to change it, they would rather see that it be done through the court system or through political means.
Well, why do you think this movement sprung up in Soda Springs?
All the individuals who felt most strongly about it lived here, and I think it's just about as simple as that.
The national impact is going to be absolutely zero. The local impact, and this is my opinion, okay, the local impact has been that of a swarm of gnats. We just don't, they're very bothersome. There's been a lot of exchange, verbal exchange and written exchange in the letters to the editor and so on. And very frankly, I don't think that this whole situation is viewed by the general population of this county as being very important. The philosophy that I've been hearing from the protest group is that the government won't do anything and the government can't do anything, and there are certain
You can't
protections.
go to jail for not paying your taxes.
That's the consensus, and I think the people that I've talked to anyway within the county feel that they're happy that something is finally being done. I don't think they're really concerned about the outcome of the action.
Members of the Citizens Tax Council have said that you disobey the Constitution by complying with what the State Tax Commission or the judge orders you to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we're all entitled to our opinion. They, as I understand their complaint, is that I don't interpret the Constitution. However, I remember back in 8th grade history when they told me that there were 3 branches of the government: the executive and the legislative and the judicial, and that the judicial interpreted the law and the executive enforced the law and the legislative made the law. Although I certainly have an opinion as to what the Constitution should be, I don't have the power to interpret that and enforce that. I have the power to enforce a court order, yes, and that's what I'll do, but interpreting and enforcing, I think we're bordering, in fact, I think we're very fast approaching a dictatorship when we do that.
What's your personal opinion of the Citizens Tax Council and their general activities?
They're a group of people who have a cause, and there certainly has to be some truth in that cause, or the cause wouldn't continue, just like any cause that's formulated and is pursued by any group of people. They're law-abiding. They are not, to my knowledge, violating any laws. They're simply invoking their rights as a citizen, and I support that. I think any of us who think that we have a cause should do that.
In Arkansas, it was a county sheriff who died during the shootout with tax protester Gordon Call. Actions like that keep local law enforcement officials here in Soda Springs on mental alert. Cliff Turner claims his group would never instigate violence, although he says the possibility of violence erupting is very real.
I can see violence resulting because it did 200 years ago. We would never instigate violence. It would have to be instigated by the government or by the state of Idaho, for instance. We are, however, very well prepared to defend ourselves against any violence that they might instigate.
How are you prepared?
Well, we have, on a personal basis, I'm well armed. I've been well armed, mainly because a well-armed militia, which is the citizenry in this country, is what keeps the foreign aggressors from coming over here. It's not our military power. It also tells our government that we, by being armed, by being prepared, that we won't tolerate these things. If they try to bring violence against us, then we're prepared to defend against that. You know, the Garden Call thing in North Dakota is an example. This man was put into a position where he had no other choice, I believe. We've investigated that, and the time may come when we're put in a position where we have to defend, and it'll be purely defensive. We have no intention of starting any violence.
We'll continue to follow this story. That's all for tonight. I'm Paula Wissel in Pocatello. Good night.
The funding for this program is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the Friends of 4, 10, and 12.